In this video we're going to be looking at economic factors and how they influenced westward expansion and people moving to the west. So if we start with the first economic trade of the century, which was the fur trade. So this was from the beaver, because the beaver produced fur that people were attracted to. So it meant settlers would move west to hunt these animals and then sell the pellets for it. So there was like different companies that you could sell them to. So there was like the American Fur Company and the Rocky Mountain Company. And so they would sell these pellets of fur and then get good money in return. So it made people want to move west to take advantage of this economic trade. And this initial settlement was important because it was the first people. So they were the first people to open the barrier, in the sense that they were actually making a living out there and not just exploring. And then this also opened up trails from like the Appalachians to the Rockies onto the mountains. It just opened up the west for more people. However, the trade declined due to changes in fashion and the decline of the beaver, because so many people hunt it. But even though this economic trade went down, it was still important that it happened, because it meant that there was pioneers who had gone to the west for the beavers, but then they still stayed and settled. And a lot of them acted to guide the wagons to and from. So overall, the fur trade definitely wasn't the biggest economic factor, because there were so many more that were more important in bringing a lot more settlers to the west later on. But it is still important because it's the first one, and it opened up these trails to allow future settlers to come and make profit from different economic sources. The next economic factor that we can look at is mining, as this is probably the most important, but we'll get to it later on. And so mining started in the west mostly because of the California gold rush. That's what started it off and started this kind of gold fever that attracted people to the west. So this was in 1848 to 1849, and within a few months 100,000 settlers had moved to California, which is a lot to think about there, because it's so far west California, you can't go any western than California, and then going from the east. So it shows how dedicated people were to get to California for this gold rush, and it shows the kind of excitement around it, making it one of the most important factors. And it was important because it educated people on how to mine and how to get these gold ores, which meant that when other mining establishments and other mining frontiers came through, which we'll get to in a minute, it meant that people already had the skills, and then they became more popular, and it kind of expanded from there. Also, it meant that the American economy boosted because of it, because it meant there was more gold in circulation. So not only for opening up the west, which I know is kind of the point, but it is also important for America as a whole to expand its economic prospects. And specifically the kind of people who would go to the west for the gold rush, it was all kind of young, ambitious men who again would take up other opportunities in the west when they came, so like different mining prospects in different places. And so this can be criticised because, like I said, because these young men kept on moving to different places, and then there was never really a permanent mining frontier established. Because as soon as kind of like the gold in California went low, then these young miners would move elsewhere. So the big kind of towns and cities that were set up for mining, where you had obviously the miners, but then quite a lot of people were there making economic prospects other ways, so like selling tools to the miners and stuff like that, and just like supplies. It wasn't even just the miners who were profiting from this, it was an economic opportunity for sellers as well. But anyway, so as soon as these economic prospects of mining went down, people just moved, and then these whole cities that came up and were massive, in a few months were just completely shut down again. So it wasn't really permanent, which is the limitation of it. Mining was also important in boosting other factors, so it was important for the manifest destiny, because all these Americans moving to the west to exploit these economic prospects kind of boosted the idea of, oh, we're going to make the most of this land that we've got. It's our God-given right to go and explore these lands and get the gold and other metals from it. Because it was kind of like the strike-it-rich mentality which they wanted to exploit. It was also important for the development of the railways, because it was the California gold rush that gave Congress the idea that they wanted to build the transcontinental railway line, because they wanted people to be able to get to like the very far west, like California, a lot more easily. As now people wanted to move there, it was a lot more of a thing essentially, and so it was important for the development of the railways. So there was other mining frontiers established as well, such as in Comstock Lode in Nevada in 1859. But we've still got a problem with these frontiers where as soon as the economic prospect goes, as soon as the mining goes, everybody else goes, and also just the land itself wasn't really suitable for permanent settlement. But then as soon as these kind of miners go, because they can only get kind of like the surface level of, I don't know, I'm not a miner, like they can only get at the top level of gold and everything. So as soon as they get that, then you can get these big companies start coming in who could kind of, big corporations who could go below the top level, and then they could get the gold underneath it. So it meant that despite the economic trade for the small miners going, it meant that big companies could come in and then really make an economic profit off the gold and the metal ores and everything. And then the miners who were originally the individual miners could help out in these big corporations, even though they'd only get a very small amount like profit from it. It wasn't that economically profitable, but still, when you've got these big companies, people are still more likely to come out and get the job. After 1880, these big mining corporations meant that some of the mining frontiers became a place for long-term settlement, which is different to the mining establishments of like the California gold rush, which we saw in the previous decades. So I think mining is definitely a very important factor as far as the economics go, because people were really driven and really ambitious and really motivated to move west, because it was the strike it rich, it was the whole gold fever idea of it. So people were like, especially like these young men, were caught up in the excitement, and then they had a reason to move west and they wanted to strike it rich, which not many people did. I think it was very rare to actually get rich from this mining, but still, it still got a lot of settlement west, and probably the most out of any other economic factor. The next economic factor is farming, which was another very big one because it was one of the biggest selling points of the West, is the fact that it had an abundance of free land, whereas the land in the East was, a lot of it was run down, like a lot of it in the South was infertile, and there's a lot of people in the East who it was hard to get land, whereas there was lots of it in the West. So that's one reason why a lot of people moved there, especially with the Homestead Act, but I'll talk about that later on in like government acts. Farming was specifically successful because of all the technological. I think an important factor for this factor is consistency, because farming was quite important for the Hope area because this abundance of land was there the whole time, and it was something that was attractive because of how easy it was, I guess, to make money from it. And you would think, but then something like mining was only big later on, the fur trade was only big earlier on, so the consistency of it. And also you could have individuals, like individual farmers, come in from the east to utilise this land, and then you can also get big companies who are doing like large scale farming malarkey. So you get both sides of it, which is going to increase settlement because you've got people going on their own and people going with businesses. There's some weaknesses of this type of farming though, in the fact that it didn't have the same boom that mining had, so it didn't have kind of like the big rush of ambitious men coming to farm. That didn't really happen, they were going to mine, because there was no opportunity or no possibility to strike it rich with farming, so it wasn't that appealing. And also a lot of farms were actually unsuccessful, because especially with the Homestead Act, which we'll get to, people were moving to the west to farm who didn't know how to farm. So you can imagine how that went. So I think it was over 40% of homesteads, so like over 40% of farms, didn't prove up their claim and wasn't successful. So people just would end up either squatting in the land or moving back east. Cattle farming was another way that people could make money in the West, but again there's some problems. So if you look at the bright side, you've got cattle in the West, which is only worth like $3 to $4 and they're very profitable. Hop on a train, take it east, you've got about $30 to $40 for cattle, so profit. But then there's some problems where getting the cattle to the railway stations, especially when there wasn't many, like there was only like a few in Kansas. This is like before the transcontinental railway and everything like that. So it meant that the cattle were losing weight when walking, so less meat, losing profit. They were trampling other people's farms, which could cause problems, so you've got that. And then they could be lost on the way as well. But it was a profitable market to make money, and again, I would say a relatively less complicated one, because all you kind of need to do is be somewhere that's near a railway point and put the cattle on the trains. I don't know. I don't see how difficult it can be. I mean, I've done it before, but you know. I don't know the science of it. But I must speak frankly, Mr. Shankly. Give us your money.